Today I'm going to show you how to change rotors and brakes on a 2014 Grand Cherokee. It should be the same directions for any year from 2011 to 2018, and most likely it will work for a lot more other cars as well. This is the rear we're doing today on the right side, so let me show you what parts you will need. You're going to need a brand new rotor. They come pretty cheap online. I'm sure you can get one at a local AutoZone and so on. Fresh brake pads, ceramic is the way to go. You're going to need brake cleaner. This is going to be used to clean off any grease, protective grease on this rotor. You want fresh, clean metal touching the brake pads so the grease doesn't soak into them and affect its performance. A rag for cleanup, paper towels, gloves if you want to protect your hands, always recommend it. Don't judge me that I don't use them. You might need this guy, I will show you guys later why. A C-clamp, bungee that's going to be used to hang the caliper so it doesn't dangle in the air, flathead screwdriver, socket set. You're going to need an 18mm socket and also a 7mm hex, possibly a hammer to loosen up the rotor, some brushes to clean up dust, rust, and so far, and some brake lubricant. This is going to be used to lubricate all the moving parts on the back of the pads and so on. So let's get started. Quick close-up of what the rotors look like. As you see, they are very worn out. They should have been changed a while ago. The pads are basically gone. And yeah, when you drive, this car is squeaking and grumbling. So for the first step, we're gonna pop this clip off right here. The way you do it, put a flathead screwdriver right in between the rotor and the clip, give it some pressure, and just lift it out. And that's it. We're gonna save this guy for later as we're gonna clean it up and put it back in at the end. Now, over here on the Jeep, there's a little rubber seal here. Let me clean this up with my nylon brush. I didn't find the need to replace these yet, but it might be a good idea after a couple changes. So this little rubber seal is actually what's preventing the rotor from sliding off when everything's off. You want to pop this off or you won't be able to get it off. So I just got a couple little flathead screwdrivers here that I'm using. If you have like a hook type tool, that would probably work better. And all you do is pry it up, pull it off. We'll clean this up and we're gonna save it for later when we reassemble everything. Here's the side view of the caliper assembly that holds the brake pads against the rotors. This is the piston that pushes the brake pads against the rotors to create pressure to stop the car. One thing you have to remember is this is coming out a lot more right now as the brake pads are thinner. So we're gonna have to push this guy back in to accommodate for the larger pads. One way of doing it is you grab a screwdriver, and since this is an old rotor that I'm replacing, I really don't care about causing damage or scratches to the surface. So we're putting the flathead screwdriver inside between the pads and the rotors, and you just give it gently, push it back to you to depress the piston. As you see, the entire assembly is moving back right here, and that's going to give you all the space you need later to get the new pads on without a problem. Now we're going to remove the top portion of the caliper right here, and the way you do this, you grab your 7mm hex socket, and there's two bolts, one here and one on the bottom, that you're going to pop these caps off, and we're going to remove those bolts. So let me show you how. So we're going to remove the two bolts that are holding this caliper portion right here. Remember to save these caps, so you're going to need them for later. loose now. I tried to get you guys an angle to show you where I'm taking off the bottom one. It's a little tighter space here, but we just make it in. And they're actually not on super tight, so you shouldn't need a lot of force to take them off. That feels about right. And this guy is off. Got the two rear bolts off. Now we're gonna pop this caliper assembly off with the pads. So as you guys can see, these pads are shot. I'm gonna pop this one off. Front one here. Yeah, there's literally nothing left on this. This should have been done a while ago. I mean, the pad is gone. This is all metal now. That's why the rotor has to go now too. We're gonna hang this caliper assembly with the bungee up here somewhere. This way it's not pulling on the cable. That's fine right there. So now we're gonna get in the back here and we're gonna remove these two big bolts. That's 18mm socket. So let's get that done. I want to grab a hammer to loosen them up if you don't have a breaker, because they're gonna be a little tight. That's really it. It's just a couple bolts holding this entire thing. Save the bolts, you're gonna need them obviously. Okay, so now the rotor should just come off. Since this is old and rusted, we're probably gonna have to give it a little tap. Remember how we removed the rubber seal? That's the reason why, as that will be holding it right now. So all you do is do a little tap on each end, a little more, and I think we're good. All right, one more. So one thing when doing the rear brakes, this is your emergency brake. Make sure you don't turn them on when you're doing rear brakes or you'll never pull the rotor off. That's what was actually kind of probably the rust holding it. So we do want to clean that up a little bit, make sure there's no rust sitting back here anywhere. So this old guy is gone. Let's get the fresh rotor. Alright, so before you install the new rotors, they're covered with protective oil grease so they don't rust up during transit and storage. So we want to clean it off, and what we're going to use is some good old brake cleaner. People sometimes use dishwashing detergent and stuff like that, but I'm not bringing this into the house, so this will work great. Paper towel. This stuff dries really quick, so you don't have to worry about waiting to let it dry and stuff. Want to get the other side too, inside of the hub as well. And now we can begin the reassembly. So we're gonna take this guy, just slide it right back on. Just make sure you guys have all this stuff, any like excessive rust cleaned off. You want a nice clean connection here. And this should slide on perfectly. Now we're gonna put this rubber gasket O-ring back that we took off before. This is the part that holds the rotor in. Now we can begin reassembling the caliper assembly. Before you put this back on, put a little grease on the ends wherever the brakes are gonna, pads gonna touch, just to minimize any noise and vibration. You don't have to go a lot, just a little bit, just to have the contact areas covered. And get your big bolts. It's gonna go right back here, just like we took it off. And you're supposed to use a torque wrench to reinstall these. I don't have one, so I'm not going to be using one. I'm just going to do it by hand. Now we're just going to give it a good tightening. That should do it. Now we can get our brake pads. Same thing with this. Any contact points, make sure to grease them up. So this is the rear one with the little clips that goes into the piston that's inside the caliper. And this is the one that's in the front. Same with the tips over here. Just don't get any on this. You want a clean contact between the rotor and the brake pads, otherwise you'll affect its performance. We're gonna get the rest of the assembly back from here. Make sure you guys remove this. Don't leave it on your spring after you're done. So make sure the piston is depressed and all clean. So as I mentioned, I depressed this with a screwdriver before. If you don't have one, there is a caliper compression tool that you can use. You can also grab one of these guys, put an old brake pad against this, clamp it from this side to this side and close it that way. That's a C-clamp. So we're gonna put a little bit of grease on the back here as well. And you want to make sure this is all clean around here as well, because this goes back into the piston. And one thing we're also going to lubricate is these bolts right here. Nothing crazy, just a little bit so it's smooth motion when get them back in there. Get your brake pad with the clip, snap that right in, lubricate right in here, as that's where the pads will be touching. Now we can throw on the front one. This is facing outwards, the clip goes inside, and it should slide in perfectly into the grooves here. And now we can slide this back on, and we have enough space to put this on as we push the piston back before. Now we get back in here, line up the bolts, and tighten those up. First I'm going to do it by hand, because over here there's actually not a lot of space to get your wrench in, so you got to screw it in a little bit with the bolt. Go to the top. Same with here, I'm just going to tighten it by hand. Strong enough, don't overdo it. I believe it's only about 25-30 pounds of torque you need for here. you have thread locker, it's always good to throw some of that on. I don't, so you will not see me do that right now. Get the bottom. It's gonna be a little bit to get that out. Alright, see, assembly's on. You might notice it's a little loose. That's where the clip comes into play, and also you're still gonna have to pump the brakes to tighten this up. So just like with everything else that touches, we're gonna lubricate this clip. Any contact points. And the way you clip it on is first get one of these in, hold it against, push it back, get this in, push this back here, and then snap it all back in. Make sure it's all the way in, and that's it. Your brakes are assembled. Thing I forgot, make sure you put the clips back on for the caliper assembly bolts. And that's it. So you're all set with the brake assembly. Get your wheel back on, make sure you tighten those lug nuts. Once you get back in your car, make sure to pump the brakes so everything gets nice and tight, and you are all good. Thanks for watching. I hope this was informational. If you have any comments, suggestions, or questions, comment below. I'm going to have more videos coming for this car and other projects. Got a challenge for you all. Let's see if you can make that thumbs up button turn blue. Please subscribe, hit that bell, and thanks for watching.